Good morning. Thank you very much for coming, and welcome to the session, Using Analytics with Microsoft 365 to get current and stay current with Windows 10. I'm Sherry Brandt with Dell EMC Services, and
I'm Scott Grusing with CHS. I'm the Manager of Productivity and Client Services.
And I'm Vijay Krishnamurthy. I run the end-user computing practice for Dell Services.
Today, what we're going to be doing is providing an overview of the journey that we helped CHS take as they began to really develop the process for how they were going to get current and stay current as they transitioned to Windows 10. And that's going to provide really some great background into what many other organizations are going to have to do as they travel this same path. Then Vijay will really provide an overview of Windows Analytics and some of the ways that we leveraged Windows Analytics on this engagement. Wrap up with the lessons learned, and then open up the floor for a question and answer. Now you'll see a little bit of the story on CHS's journey.
CHS is a farmer-owned co-op that's been around since 1929. We want to bring new technology to the agricultural space and drive adoption of that technology across the globe.
Dell EMC sees the modern workforce moving in a direction where work is no longer a place, it's an activity. We've got devices that will enable you to do anything.
The largest challenge is getting the large amounts of data to our end users. Keep in mind, our end users are in farm fields and places that don't have robust infrastructure set up.
One of the things that Dell EMC brought to us was the realization that we had to change how we processed and adopted the technology from a change management standpoint.
In previous migrations, we were forced to do almost an entirely manual process. With Windows Analytics, we were able to get a snapshot on day one to see where we stand.
We took a glance to see how many applications it pulled in, and it was over 19,000 applications. Getting current and staying current in an agricultural space is really important to us. Migrating to Windows 10 brings increased management capabilities and security controls, and allows our owners and farmers to be more productive.
It allows everybody to work together and develop relationships, get projects done.
Dell EMC has come in as a partner and have brought forth ideas and offerings that support our environment.
There wouldn't be a modern desktop environment without using Office 365 in combination with Windows 10. Our end users can still have access to their files, still be productive, still achieve their goals.
All right, so that provided really a nice, lively introduction to what we'll be sharing with you today. You know, Windows 10 brings a new way to build, deploy, and manage your Windows environment. And with that comes the need for organizations to really develop a process on how are they going to not only get current, but stay current. So as we work through the scenario today, hopefully what you're going to walk away with really is an understanding of how you can do just that. At this point, I'd like to have Scott share a little bit about CHS, their organization, and some of the brands associated with the CHS name.
Sure. Thank you all for being here. CHS is a global agricultural business owned by farmers, ranchers, and producers. We are diversified in grain, energy, and food, and we support our producers, manufacturing, and growers to help them prosper their business. We supply energy, crop nutrients, grain marketing, animal feed, food ingredients, as well as operating petroleum refineries for our Cenex brand gasoline, lubricants, propane, and other renewable energies. We're a Fortune 100 company. 2017, we were at $31.9 billion in net revenue. So spread across the globe, spread across the US. How many countries? I think last count is 19 countries, from Asia Pacific to Latin America to Europe and the US. I think we're in 16, predominantly in 16 US states.
Next, we'd like to have you go through some of the challenges, Scott, that CHS experienced and really caused you to want to reach out and work with us on this engagement.
So some of the challenges that we knew about were our hardware life cycles. We, as an organization, our business units owns their asset, and depending on how profitable they are, they may or may not refresh hardware. So we have some very legacy equipment out there in the field that we need to take care of. So as part of our effort, we need to bring those up to modern machines. We're doing that with new Dell hardware. We also have a lot of Lenovo and Dell machines in the environment that are running Windows 7. So there's a large pool or percentage of our machines that are on legacy OSs. Some of them are on Windows 7 32-bit Pro, and we need to get them to a more secure state, which is the next feed here. The security controls that start to come into play with Windows 10 help reduce the risk for CHS and make things just a little bit more secure. As we're doing this, we're also rolling out some of the new productivity tools. So we use Yammer, we use Stream. We're trying to use some of those new technologies to drive productivity out into those rural areas so that they feel engaged and have the opportunity to do things differently. One of our big focuses is also on improving that end user experience. With some upgrades in the past, there's been a very traumatic experience for the end user. It looks different, it feels different, things are just not the same, and change is hard. So what we're trying to do is communicate those changes to them, allow them to do some of the self-servicing, and just to improve that experience. We have to make sure that all of the business critical applications work. The OS is one thing, but making an application work on it, make it stable on it, and make sure that you have no impact or downtime to the business was key to us. The big challenge you may have seen, we have sites that are in small town North Dakota or South Dakota that may not have a very robust infrastructure. So we have to figure out how to get that image and that OS upgrade and that process to them in a very seamless way. And what we wanted to use was analytics. We have a big push to do things based on facts and the analytics that provide those facts instead of just what we thought or what we think we know about the business or what we think or know about the network to the business. It's all about that. The last thing is around staffing. As with most people, we never have enough people. So the more we can automate, the more that we can put in the processes that take some of that workload off of people, the better off we are.
Thank you, Scott. So clearly, CHS had their fair share of challenges when they wanted to wrap their arms around Windows 10. So our customer came to us and said, Dell, how do we get to Windows 10? And not just getting to Windows 10, how can we stay current on Windows 10 was really the problem statement CHS came to us with. Of course, Dell has been doing this for a while, and this is what we do best. So we have a very well-defined, phased approach to any OS migration, and particularly so for Windows 10. We have perfected a three-phase approach to the Windows 10 migration. Of course, we wanted to invest a lot of our time and effort in the first phase, which was a lot of readiness and design activities. The second phase was really investing a bunch of our time figuring out CHS's applications portfolio. As you know, as IT administrators, the end user probably cares the most about their applications, not so much about the operating system itself. So we wanted to ensure that there was no issues with CHS's applications, which was the second big focus area. The final phase involved bringing the two together, the readiness and design that we had created for CHS, and also the enterprise and Windows 10 ready set of applications that we had created for CHS. We brought the two together, and we went live with a small-scale pilot, which is now grown up to, how many, Scott? Nearly 3,000 to 4,000 users. So that's the approach we took. Over the next couple slides, I want to share a little more detail about what's involved in each of these phases, et cetera. As with any big program, you will probably invest the most time in the upfront discovery and analysis and design phase. So in the case of Windows as a Service design, it was really no different. We got with our customer. We spent a lot of time understanding their current mode of operation. We learned about their different user buckets of users. We wanted to know what kind of function the business users performed. And why was that important? Because that is what would dictate which servicing channel and which ring within that servicing channel each of those buckets of users would reside. So user segmentation was a very important activity for us. We also invested a lot of time, just understanding our customers' current mode of operation in several different areas. We tried to understand their, end user help desk, how they are doing systems management currently, and PC deployments, imaging, applications, a lot of that. And I'll go into those details, on the next slide, because I think that's probably the most important activity in the upfront phase. At the end of the first phase, what we really had was a well-defined design for our customers' WaaS implementation. And we also had what we call a WaaS readiness matrix. That is the gap analysis that we performed for our customer over those 7 different categories that I just alluded to. The second phase was really using the information from upgrade readiness and essentially getting a grip on our customer's application landscape, right? What applications are top tier, the most business critical, what are the other important applications, and what are not so important, and what are, definitely those applications unsupported by IT. So we had a very good understanding of the applications. That's what we got from Upgrade Analytics. And that's where we introduced Dell's own capabilities to take the applications to the next level. The next level was really to ensure that the applications were compatible and ready for Windows 10. That's what Dell brought to the table. And so at the end of phase 2, we had a thorough Windows as a Service design, a thorough understanding of what our customer had, and also a set of applications that we could then distribute as part of our Windows as a Service pilot. And phase 3, as I mentioned, was just bringing the two together and going live with the pilot. We did enough diligence up front in our phase 1 and phase 2, and Windows Analytics actually helped us a lot to get there. So the actual pilot phase was really a very streamlined effort on our part. And Scott, is there anything you would like to chime in?
Yeah, so one of the things we did during the pilot, we did 500 machines that were in our initial pilot, and we didn't have a single machine that actually failed and went down hard. So we built in the steps to make sure that the data was protected and the business user was least impacted.
Thank you, Scott. So yes, again, clearly the readiness and design phase up front was the biggest part for us. And I want to talk a little more about what are some of the categories of maturity levels we wanted to analyze our customer in. Essentially, we understood the customer's current mode of operation in each of these categories, and so we identified gaps that they had, So why was that important? Because while an OS migration can just be a move from Windows 7 to Windows 10, it doesn't just have to be an OS migration. It's also your opportunity to clean house. Whatever inefficiencies you have currently don't have to carry over necessarily into your Windows 10 world. So that's what we try to encourage and inspire our customer to adopt, which is why we looked at how they're doing the help desk currently, how they're doing systems management currently, imaging, deployment. We found some areas where CHS could be doing things different and better, but they were performing at a very agile, dynamic level in a lot of our categories. For example, when it came to end user support, just like a lot of other organizations, CHS had a pretty robust help desk. They also had a model for end user self-service. However, that was something they had not adopted yet. Their users were not, into that mode quite yet. Our hope, as part of migrating CHS to Windows 10, is that given how secure and intuitive the platform is, CHS users would feel more empowered to adopt an end user self-service model going forward. When it came to device security, CHS has a very robust, security stack. They also use the Patch Tuesday paradigm. They push out patches once every month. They have SCCM for systems management. They're using the 1E suite for bandwidth optimization and for all the other capabilities that 1E brings to bear. Again, of course, they have SCCM, which means OSD is a natural fit for operating system deployments and imaging. And I touched upon applications already. I think the single biggest challenge when it came to applications for CHS is the fact that their applications are not centrally managed by IT. So each of their BUs manages applications at their level. So IT tends to be surprised every so often, Scott?
So once in a while, we'll have an application introduced in one of our global locations because we have a global IT staff in those locations, and they'll bring in an app that we weren't aware of. But we work to make that available through SCCM pretty quickly. It just sometimes comes as a surprise.
Thank you. And finally, change management. Again, they have a very agile process for change management. The change control board meets once every week. If it's a fairly simple request, it gets approved without a change control board intervention. Otherwise, you take about a week to approve it.
Yeah, it depends on what the change is and what the complexity is and which platform owners are involved. So it's pretty complex.
Thanks, Scott. So at the end of our first phase of design, we knew a lot of information about our customer. We knew which of their users would fit into which servicing ring, which branch they should be. We also knew which users or systems would not be targets for Windows 10 servicing. And of course, we knew which servicing tool we would be using for CHS. That's an easy one. They already had SCCM in-house, so that was an easy call out. So Scott, why don't you tell us, how we went live with our Windows servicing pilot?
So sure, the first thing we did is identify what versions of Windows 10 we already had in the environment. And as you can see, we had many, and what's not listed there is there were even some Windows 10 Pro that were in the environment. So we had to decide when and how we wanted to step in and say, this is the version, so that all of the security tools, all of the management tools work on that version. It may be that 1803 is released. The other vendors may not be ready for that quite yet. So you need to hold that back. And a lot of people may not understand that. So you have to have those conversations. You have to watch that sprawl and make sure that you've got the controls around it.
Thank you, Scott. Okay. So I'm sure this graphic is familiar to a lot of you folks. Can I see a show of hands as to who has seen this before? Okay, that's quite a few hands. So very standard Microsoft recommended approach, folks, for Windows as a service adoption. I'm not going to go into the details of this. Meet me off after the presentation today, and if you want more info, I can walk you through it. I want to call your particular attention to some of the recent announcements that Microsoft made just a couple weeks back. They made some salient changes to the Windows servicing model itself. What they essentially announced was, up until now, whatever versions of Windows 10 have been released, those would be supported for 2.5 years, 30 months. Going forward, any new release starting 1803 plus, as in 1809 and beyond, the spring release would be supported for 18 months, a year and a half. However, the fall releases would be supported for 30 months, 2.5 years. That's a pretty significant change if you think about it. However, when it comes to Windows as a Service implementation and adoption, none of these announcements should fundamentally change your approach to implementation of Windows 10 servicing itself. So why am I saying that? Because it is the new world order, folks, right? So Windows 10 and the new servicing model is here to stay. There is no getting around it. So the sooner we get on that bandwagon, the better off we will all be. Any delay is only going to put off the inevitable. And Microsoft has provided ways in which you can ease that transition into Windows 10. We will talk about it more as we discuss further in this presentation. For now, I just wanted to leave you with that thought.
Sure, and what we did from a servicing plan, as we identified with Dell EMC, we talked about SCCM. We have a philosophy of getting current and staying current there too. And then we brought in the 1E products to do some more user experience improvements and some network bandwidth controls. We mentioned that we've got remote sites. Getting an image or those feature updates out to those remote sites is challenging without impacting the business, so we put some of those controls in place. We did set a ring for the Windows Insider program. So we have some people that get it really early, but that's a very small group of people. Then IT users and business analysts, because those are the people that know the applications that are running on those systems best. And then we decided that we were going to be different waves depending on seasonality. And we're going to cover this kind of in the next slide as well, so let's go to that one. Ring 0, we locked that down to 5 users. These are the 5 people that need to start working on this early. Then Ring 1, within a couple of weeks, we'd let like 25 people have it. Still really controlled, because the odds are the vendor tools aren't ready. Ring 2, in 6 weeks, they can have it. And then as we progress, you'll see that the bulk of our users are 25 weeks out from release. We're not going to jump on it too soon, and then we're going to roll through towards the end. What we don't have on here is long-term servicing branch. We are looking at it. We do have some plant control systems that will end up being on long-term servicing branch. It's just not in a ring here.
So what were some of the, Scott, what were some of the things that you had to keep in mind when you were thinking of who would go into each of those rings from a business perspective?
Sure. Some of the biggest pieces, being an agricultural business, we can't put a Minnesota site that is in harvest mode like we just went through. We don't touch them during that time period because it'll disrupt the business, and that's where we make our money. So we don't touch them. Our propane delivery services in the winter to heat the houses, to dry the crops that are in the silos, we don't touch propane during certain periods of time. And that's, we'll get to, the relationship managers were key in helping define that. It's all about the seasonal turnover. It's about the refineries going through their turnover from one version of petroleum to another. So we have to avoid all of those business pieces to not impact the business.
Thank you, Scott. So like I said, folks, while Windows as a service is definitely here, and it is here to stay, you don't have to jump in head first and take Microsoft's 6-month feature update cadence. You don't have to adopt it on day one. You can give yourself a better, smoother transition into Windows as a service. So when we considered the way CHS was behaving and how new the Windows servicing model was to CHS's IT personnel, we thought that it would be a better transition if they adopted an every other release approach. So that way they'll have one whole year to get comfortable with a particular version of Windows 10. And then, over time, as their Windows as a service implementation becomes more streamlined, they definitely have the option to get into the 6-month cadence that Microsoft is espousing. So I think that's worked out very well for our customers so far, and you will choose to revisiting that as and when you feel even more comfortable with it.
So one of the things we wanted to look at is for the release schedule, we know that there will be groups that can go early. Everybody has early users in their environment. I don't use a business critical application other than the productivity suite. So I'm one of those people that can go earlier in their cycle, and we'll be evaluating how we pull those people a little earlier to get those feature sets and those new productivity pieces in play and the security features.
Thank you, Scott.
The next thing we had to do is go through and decide who really were the key players in the project team. So we had to make sure we had a great sponsor, because without that, this is not going to work. Project managers, technical leads, service center are imaging the technical people. The bigger ones I want to call out are the relationship managers. They were the ones that are key to figure out when we can do an upgrade to the business without impacting them. The other one is the business analysts, because they'll have knowledge of what applications the vendor supports on that version, and they can help create that ring around their application. And we'll get into a little bit of how that helps you later. And then the other piece is to make sure security engineering and that vendor stack or that security stack is compliant with the new OS.
Scott, Windows 10 inherently is supposed to be easier to administer, easier to manage going forward. And here you are talking about establishing a big project team to manage your Windows 10 environment. Can you explain why?
Sure, Vijay. The goal here was, just like any other upgrade, this one kind of is waterfall-ish. We've got to get started on the process. As we move through time, we're hoping that the improvements that the analytics bring into play start to reduce the amount of time we need from these individual roles. They're still important and will never be excluded from the project, but hopefully their time in the project is less.
Thank you, Scott. So folks, that's basically how we implemented, yes.
So there was a comment next to the service center for communications. So it is there. And we actually engaged our marketing communication team to help craft the communication and define when we should be sending it out and kind of that message. So they're key, too. Thank you for the question.
So folks, I now want to shift gears and tell you a little bit about Windows Analytics and how it came in handy for CHS. It's a crash course. I'm not planning to go into a lot of detailed technical depth. I think there are other sessions here during Ignite this week. And I've added that to a references section towards the bottom half of the presentation. So you'll definitely have that for takeaway. There's a couple of immersion zone sessions as well that you can go and get some hands-on experience with Windows Analytics. For now, I just want to leave you with a feel for what analytics is, how easy or hard it is to implement, and what kind of information you can hope to get from it. That'll make your upgrade and your steady state management of Windows 10 feasible. Windows Analytics at its core, folks, is a solution set, which primarily comprises of 3 different solutions: upgrade readiness, update compliance, and device health. Upgrade readiness is the only solution in this set which works with Windows 7 and Windows 8.1. The other 2 solutions, update compliance and device health, are intended for you to use when managing Windows 10 on an ongoing basis. Of course, you can use upgrade readiness even to upgrade from one version of Windows 10 to the next, but like I said, it is the only feature which can be used for pre-Windows 10 versions. As the name implies, upgrade readiness is intended to give you a snapshot on your current infrastructure to prepare you for upgrading to Windows 10. Update compliance, on the other hand, is intended to tell you how compliant you are for a targeted Windows 10 platform, primarily from a feature updates perspective and from a quality updates perspective. If you're using Windows Defender, it'll also tell you how compliant you are with Windows Defender antivirus definitions. That's what it's used for. Device health, as the name implies, it's used to help you fix any kind of device crashes, or if you have any particular drivers that are crashing often, you will get a snapshot of what drivers or what devices are crashing, and you can take corrective measures. Now, the important thing to note is in none of these solutions does Microsoft or the product itself actually solve the problem for you, okay? It gives you information that you can then take and then drive the issue to resolution. It'll tell you what device, what application, what driver has an issue, and it'll give you ideas on how to resolve it. But you can't easily click a button and go, here, fix it. No, not going to happen. So as the IT administrator, that is something you will have to do. Now, what you can do is, you can identify single issues that may be impacting a big bucket of your user base, so that when you get the pointer from Windows Analytics, you can fix it for a big batch of users. And that's where IT is going to score some easy points. That's the intent behind Windows Analytics itself. I'll next go into a little deeper dive on each of these solutions. Upgrade readiness, very simple. It gives you a snapshot of your applications, your drivers, and your computers. The entire Windows Analytics suite, folks, is presented to you in a workflow manner. It's super easy to implement, and it's also very easy to take action on. There's white tiles and there's blue tiles. White tiles are informational. Blue tiles are call to action. Blue tiles are call to action. Right? With upgrade readiness, it's a 3-step process. You push out the compatibility updates needed to generate the information out of your target devices, and then you start analyzing the data. Right? Specifically, when it comes to applications, you first get a snapshot of your applications, and then you start analyzing them. You assign them orders of priority, and then you next look at the issues that upgrade readiness calls out for each of those applications. You address those issues. Again, Windows upgrade readiness is not going to address the issues for you. You have to take corrective action, which is where a partner like Dell can come in and help. And then finally, on step 3, you get a snapshot of what your portfolio now looks like. How many computers are ready for upgrade? How many have issues? And how many will simply not upgrade? That is the final summary you get. Obviously, by the time you get to the final summary stage, you want to make sure that most of your computers are in a state to be upgraded. Okay. Again, like I said, application categorization, very important feature of upgrade readiness. By default, what Microsoft does is, if it finds an application on 2% or less than your total number of systems, it'll call it out. Upgrade readiness just says low install count or low device count. Now, we as IT administrators know that we can have a single application maybe installed on one computer, but it may be responsible for $200 million of our business, right? So you can't just look at the install count as a guide to ignore or include an application in your analysis. So my recommendation would be that you ignore the fact that it's a low install count, and you give each application its due credit, and you analyze it. All the other applications that upgrade readiness discovers, by default, it sets it to a priority of, to a status of not reviewed. What that means is it warns us as the IT administrator to go and act upon. So that's where we would come in and look at all the applications and change the priority from not reviewed to business critical or highly important, or can be potentially ignored. Or if you're still working on it, you can set in the not reviewed or under review kind of status. Right? So they give you the plumbing that you can then use to track the progress of your applications. Right? So with CHS, Scott, when we went through this application categorization effort, what did we find?
So you may have seen in the little video that we had 19,000. So we were immediately able to say, all these system drivers that are going to be replaced with Windows 10 come off that list. We were able to go through and say, these applications, we don't care, they're not coming forward. So they come off the list. So as we did that ready to upgrade number, based on shifting all of those, started to creep up. And we had a couple applications that added 500 machines that instantly were ready to go and gave us that visibility on a fluid basis as you reviewed the apps.
Thank you, Scott. So there you have it, folks. Again, application categorization, a very critical activity. So like I said, the goal of upgrade readiness is to get us to a state where we can upgrade our systems to Windows 10. That's what the first solution provides. Update compliance, on the other hand, is intended to ensure that your devices are ready for the selected version of Windows 10, the target in your solution. So when you install and when you configure Windows Analytics, it gives you an option to change the target version against which you're analyzing your infrastructure. By default, it's always set to the semi-annual channel. And you have the option to go and change that version so that when update compliance does its thing, it will be measuring your infrastructure against the target platform that you're interested in. Like I said, you just get a detailed inventory of your devices, computers, and there will be call-outs to action as to which of those computers are at the targeted Windows 10 version. So that's an easy one. And also, even if it's the desired target version, does it have the latest quality update? That's a check it does for you. So if you find that a particular device has not gotten the latest cumulative update that you had intended to push out, you can take corrective action, and it will remediate that scenario for you. Again, it's something that we as systems administrators have got to do. It's not something update compliance is going to do for us automatically. One question I get asked a lot of the time is, I already have SCCM, VJ. Why do I need update compliance to tell me which systems are compliant? Can I not get that level of information from SCCM? Sure, you can get that information from SCCM, but the problem you have to remember is, your systems may not have checked in with, say, SCCM anytime recently, okay? Plus, when you look at the general direction in which the industry is headed, modern provisioning, modern device management, unified endpoint management, these are the trends that the industry is heading in, championed by visionaries like Microsoft. I'd be very surprised if, say, 10 years from now, on-premise systems management would still continue to be a thing. So again, the industry is being pulled in the direction of cloud-based management and cloud-based provisioning. So in that sense, I think update compliance is definitely a step in the right direction for all of us as IT administrators. Right? Plus, there is one tactical advantage as well with update compliance in that you get a more real-time snapshot of your compliance status. Why is that? Because even if your users are not logging into your corporate network, chances are they are connected to the internet. So you can get those devices over the internet with Windows Analytics. So in that sense, it'll definitely give you a more real-time snapshot. But I get it. It's a question we get asked a lot of the time. And the third solution, as I alluded to, is device health. Again, very simple feature. Again, all these technologies within Windows Analytics are not hard to implement. You push out a compatibility update, an agent, you enable telemetry on your devices, and then they start talking back to the Microsoft cloud. Microsoft makes sense of that information and relays it back to your OMS workspace or your Azure Log Analytics portal. And you look at the data and you make sense of it. Specifically in case of device health, you'll get a snapshot of how many of your devices are crashing, or is there a specific driver that's causing the problem? And you can drill down further, and you can get a little more information. Again, you're not going to get your full Dr. Watson dumps or a full heap or something. But again, it'll give you a pointer, and you as an IT administrator, you would know what to do. For example, I've heard from Microsoft that they had a very similar scenario where they had about 8,000 systems in one particular department that were crashing a lot of the time. They were able to find the problem, and they narrowed it down to one particular driver, and they addressed it, and now they were able to upgrade the driver to a better version, and now those 8,000 users experience far fewer crashes. That's the kind of bang you can get for the buck with device health. So very simple to implement, again, like I said, and it's a lot of value, provides you a lot of proactive and reactive insights. That's really Windows Analytics for you in a nutshell. Again, didn't mean for this to be a deep dive, a technical deep dive. There are other sessions that you can attend, and I think Microsoft has just announced Desktop Analytics, which is really the new and improved Windows Analytics. Most of the features are still the same. The only real difference is with Desktop Analytics, they've added support for Office ProPlus. So you get some more insights there as well. So folks, I wanted to summarize the Windows Analytics section by painting a portrait for you about where we were when we started this journey for CHS versus where we got to, where we are headed, right? When we installed, when we used Upgrade Analytics, obviously we didn't have very many systems that were upgraded or ready for upgrade. That's what the first picture shows. We only had 669 computers upgraded at first, and then we continued using upgrade readiness to push out more and more systems and upgrade them to Windows 10. That's a second snapshot you'll see in with 2,000 computers. Scott, where are we at now?
So currently, I think the last report I saw that we were at about just over 30% complete.
And how many is that, Scott?
About a little over 3,000 machines as of the beginning of the month.
Thank you.
We're doing about 500 to 700 machines a month going through the process.
Okay, thank you. And this is a representative snapshot of the kind of applications testing that Dell did for CHS. Now, mind you, upgrade readiness is going to give you a snapshot of all the applications that you have currently, and it'll call out potential issues as well. Okay, what it doesn't do is solve the problem for you. Okay, and Microsoft uses their intelligence from the Ready for Windows portal as well. And they will tell you if an application has been widely adopted, again, based on telemetry from their millions of other customers, right? So you're funneling your telemetry to Microsoft. Just like that, a lot of other customers are doing the same. So they are collating all that information and making sense of it and telling you that, hey, CHS, we have discovered that Adobe Acrobat 11, for example, is known to work fine on version 1607. It's widely adopted. You get that kind of an intel from Microsoft, and directionally, they're telling you that this application is probably going to be okay. Now, as owners of the business, and as IT administrators supporting our business, can we just take Microsoft's word at face value? Especially when it comes to our business critical applications. Probably not. If something were to go south, we can't exactly go back to our boss and say, Microsoft told me to do it, right? So, I think there's a fine line there where you would categorize your applications and determine which of them are the most critical to us as IT administrators. And that's where you have to make a judgment call on how deep of a testing process you would undertake. Of course, if you were to come to Dell, we can help you with both automated, scientific, tool-based testing, or even with manual testing of applications, should you choose. But again, I've seen customers have different responses to this. What I would urge you is most definitely do some level of testing, especially with your top-tier applications.
So Vijay, I think I'd add that I think we took the position of trust the information, but go ahead and verify it. Make sure that what you're trusting is accurate.
Very good point, Scott. So there you have it, folks. This is a snapshot of representative data. And now we want to transition into some of the communications and notifications to our end user. How do we involve them in this process, right? Scott?
Sure. So from a communications and reporting standpoint, we had to define when we were going to communicate based on the rings that users were in and the type of information that they needed to know up front. Do you want them to leave their machines on and go home? Do you want them to do it over lunch? Do you want to make sure they're locked in a secure facility? Don't just take for granted that they know what they should do. Make sure that you're planning out that communication and training for those users as you roll them out. We engaged with another partner to provide some training opportunities through video and sessions to get up to date on those new technologies as we release them and made those available based on the rings.
So when you compare and contrast your XP to Windows 7 migration versus your Windows 10 migration, Scott, are you seeing a tangible level of end user satisfaction using such communication norms?
So I think the biggest change that we've seen so far is that the compatibility is there for the most part, and that the user's experience going from one OS to the next isn't as invasive as XP to 7 or 7 to 8.1. 10 is a much more smooth transition for users, and the complaints were much less during this effort than I experienced doing some of the older ones.
Thank you.
And this is just a quick communication sample of making Windows 10 available, kind of drum up that fact that they want it, help them decide that they want it, that they want to pull it. Our path was to give them the capability to go into the 1E shopping application and schedule their upgrade. So if they knew they were going to be busy Thursday afternoon in a meeting, go ahead and set that upgrade time for Thursday afternoon while you're in that meeting. You come back and it's complete and you're off and running. So drive up that motivation for those people to help you pull that image down to them so you're not disrupting them during their busy time. All right, engagement learnings. What would I say I really learned with the Dell EMC engagement was that Previous operating system upgrades really were treated as a waterfall type project. Clear start, clear finish. With the Windows 10 servicing rings, it's going to be much more agile. You're going to have to constantly pay attention to the applications that come into the environment, make sure that you're updating those into the analytics portal so that as the new versions are released, you've got that path, which is handy because the cycles are coming fast. Just put it that way. The change is happening fast. So if you stay on top of it on a daily or weekly basis, you're not hitting that, oh, I'm going to spend 6 hours in a room going through a list of applications to try to classify them. You're doing that on a much more frequent basis in tiny gaps of time. With that, you also want to go through and make sure you've normalized some applications. Not in this experience, but in a previous upgrade, we went through and took 7 different VPN clients and said, no, you can't use all of those. You have to use this one. This is the approved. So we've done some normalization in this as well. The biggest one is watch for Windows 10 sprawl. The more versions of Windows 10 that are out there, the more you have to support, the more your service center or help desk needs to know what the differences are between those versions and what that may impact from a support stance. And then around the business processes and change management. And this is really how you engage with the business and how you interact to say it's coming, say what can you guys do to help us get you ready, as well as any organizational change that you need to make within your staffing to be ready for this type of scenario. Everybody runs a lean shop. Everybody has staffing that can be challenged to fit this into their today's stuff, but it'll make things easier as we move forward.
So Scott, when you think of the organization changes that took place, would you agree that Windows 10 really is asking the different areas within IT to work together in new ways?
I think there's a change in how you have to engage with the testing, how you have to engage with the network to make sure that you're considering all of those aspects, because you're not sending a team out to a location, or we're not planning on doing that. We're planning on letting these tools do the work for us. When I went through a Windows XP to 7 migration, I visited lots of sites throughout the country that, frankly, I don't want to go back to. This tool will make it so that you don't have to send a body to a location that needs an upgrade. And in our situation, that just wasn't feasible, so the tools had to come into play to get us over the hump.
And then how about the fact that Windows 10 really is needing to pull in applications folks, that teams from applications, infrastructure, and security all have to be weighing in on your decision process, correct?
Absolutely. One of the things you have to pay attention to is the applications that people use and whether or not, and it was kind of referenced on one of the previous slides, in the analysis of the applications, we went through and had a risk score against the application so that we could say, hey, you're using this application and it's a high risk. So let's work with that security engineering team or with that application team to remediate that application and get it out of the environment. And then it's always crucial to engage those application development resources to make sure that they're ready, make sure that the quality assurance testing is ready, just so that this can be a smooth process going forward. Up front, it's a lot of work.
Thank you, Scott. And from my perspective, folks, as a services provider, the biggest thing that I wanted to impress upon my customer, CHS, and also upon you, is that Windows 10 brings a very fundamental shift in mindset. It'll probably take a big cultural shift internally as you look to adopting Windows 10 on a mass scale, not just getting to Windows 10 as an operating system, but also keeping it current on an ongoing basis. You know, a lot of us as IT administrators, we are so used to holding on tight to the operating system, and in some ways, we have to learn to let go, but just a little bit. You know, Microsoft, of course, when you look at the old days when when there was XP and Vista and Windows 7, each of those upgrades was a big bang approach. You know, it was a big disruption to both us IT administrators and our end user base. And it also came with a lot of heartache. We had to establish a program, and it was a very expensive effort. You know, it's lasted this way since forever. So finally, Microsoft has paid attention to our grievances, which is why this entire Windows 10 and the Windows 10 servicing model has been implemented. And also, they've heard loud and clear from us that application compatibility is a big problem. You know, so they've tried to alleviate both of these issues going forward, which is the reason why, you know, you have the servicing model where you just set it and still maintain it, but just a little bit. You know, the goal is to free up your cycles so you can focus on more business critical activities. That's really the intent of Windows 10 servicing. And the same goes for for application readiness as well. You know, a couple of weeks back, Microsoft announced this effort for enterprise and education customers called Desktop App Assure. They are promising to make application compatibility issues a thing of the past. You know, of course, you've all heard the Microsoft spiel that, you know, if your applications work on Windows 7, 99% of the time, they do work on Windows 10. That's what they say. And generally speaking, directionally, I think that's accurate. However, like I mentioned a couple times before, we have responsibilities to our business. So we do have to do due diligence to our applications, which is why I picked the top tier or the top 15 or 20% that matter to you critically, and everything else you can figure out as it goes. So that's the single biggest takeaway from my side, folks. You know, it's a different mindset. You have to adopt it. You might as well get started sooner than later.
I also want to take the one last moment to thank Dell EMC for coming in and providing the assistance that we needed in a very timely manner with a great staff.
Likewise, Scott, thank you for being an awesome customer.
Thanks. So questions? There's some mics here so the people that are getting this via live stream can hear you.
I have two questions. First one is, did you add staff, engineering staff, to maintain the process going forward, or do you continue with your same staff you've had?
So from CHS right now, we are in a cycle where we're maintaining. We didn't add anything for this.
Okay. And then the second question is, working with Dell EMC, did they develop tools for you to use to manage the process, or were they off-the-shelf, you know, tools from others that are used to maintain that? And if so, can you say what they are?
So some of the tools, and I don't know if I can say the ones from the Dell side when we went through that, we had some tools in place. We had some processes in place. What we didn't have was a great understanding of how to use some of that. We knew Windows Analytics was out there. We had started to dig into it and said, hey, we need a little bit of help here. Who can help us? And Dell was great enough to come in and give us some information on how to use this in a more effective manner. But yeah, there's a couple of tools that Dell has that they brought to play, and then we had this stuff in-house already. So
can I add to that, Scott?
Yeah.
You know, this is not new, folks, right? Dell is in the business of helping our customers, you know, get to the next version of Windows. We've been doing this for 15, 20 years. We are tied at the hip with Microsoft, so we get a lot more intel. You know, we work with folks like Mike Niehaus a lot. He comes to Round Rock fairly frequently. And we get to shape the development of, you know, of the operating system and deployment of the operating systems. In that sense, you know, working both with Microsoft and customers like CHS and a million others, we have developed a lot of in-house IP collateral, which have now become our gold IP, you know, that we tend to use with other customers also going forward. I'm not going to name specifics here, but we do use a lot of our IP, which makes life very easy for us as engineers and also for our customers as well.
Yeah, and from a specific tool set that we currently own, 1E's Windows Servicing Suite is important to us. It allows some of that self-service user scheduling capabilities and those bandwidth controls. We also engaged with Flexera for some risk management around third-party applications. And then one of our big ones was that we implemented Brainstorm for training for users so that they could go out and watch 30 seconds or 3 minutes of a clip on what's new, what's coming, on how do they use it. So with our remote locations, it just wasn't possible to get people in a room, so we had to have another tool.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
What can you tell me about the licensing requirements and the requirements for telemetry?
Licensing, telemetry. I'm not a Microsoft licensing expert, but that said, most everything is free. You shouldn't have to pay for extra with just Windows Analytics, okay? Definitely upgrade readiness is free, and so is update compliance as well. I am aware that for device health, you need to have Windows licenses. So whatever licenses of Windows you currently have, that's going to suffice. So if you have an EA, currently that'll do. Or if you have an E3 license or an E5 license, that will do too. You need software assurance, by the way, for enterprise and education customers. So that's the licensing requirements. What was the other second half of your question? Telemetry, yes. Again, it's very thoroughly documented by Microsoft. They're a very transparent organization. And I think some of the problem is because they're overly transparent, right? Which makes us wonder. But you know, the telemetry minimum requirements are you need to be at least at a basic level for upgrade readiness. If you want more information about your, you know, which of your websites are being accessed via IE, or for troubleshooting deeper application issues, then you will have to go at the enhanced level, okay? Update compliance, it just needs the basic level of telemetry. Now, device health must have the enhanced level for telemetry. However, Microsoft in recent times, I want to say 1709 and later, they've made a functionality available such that even though you set it at the enhanced level, you can limit it to the minimum required for Windows Analytics via MDM or via policy.
I want to add something there. One of the things we saw as we were going through the analytics process, on the main page, we started to see that some systems were no longer reporting in, our count dropped. And there was a header that said systems aren't being reported for GDPR compliance reasons. So stuff that shouldn't be coming, they don't want to see either, and we don't want to give them. So there are some controls around what privacy data is being shared.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
All
right. I put in a few more resources here for you folks as leave behinds. You will all have access to this presentation from your standard Ignite channel. Basically, when it comes to analytics implementation, you have to work with your security teams and ensure that your clients can talk to these endpoints. Oh, there's a whole bunch of them that I've listed there. And also, like I said, a lot of Windows Analytics is driven simply off of telemetry, which is enabled via compatibility updates. So there's one each for Windows 7 SP1 and Windows 8.1. Now with Windows 10, you know, all the compatibility updates are built into the operating system already, so you don't have to push anything out. For 7 SP1 and 8.1, you have a couple compatibility updates. That's really all you need. Very little plumbing. So, and finally, to wrap it up, some additional resources for you. I alluded to some related sessions, during the course of this week. If you're interested in a deeper technical dive with desktop analytics, please do attend the session. I've listed, I can't see it clear from here. But, and there are some immersion zones, some workshops as well that you can take advantage of. And there are some other links to case studies and white papers, and that's pretty much it. That's a wrap. Thank you all folks so much for coming today.
If you would please take a few moments to go ahead and evaluate the session, that would be very helpful for us. And if you've got any questions, please come on up and we'll answer them at this time. Thank you for coming.
Thank you all.